morning to you. As we head into a weekend, the Minister for Justice, Simon Harris, has come in for some criticism after saying that weekend drug takers are funding violence, crime and murder. And the Minister has made his remarks in the Dáil yesterday following a number of high-profile drug finds this week by the Gardaí. Ryan McHale is of the advocacy group Crainn. Lobbies for change in drug policy. He says that while the Minister is right in principle, government policy needs to change so that supply is targeted rather than the individuals who consume the drugs in question. And Ryan joins me on the line today. Ryan, good morning to you.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today on the programme. It is an epidemic, and I was talking to a friend here on Monday morning in studio, who popped into us in studio, and he and his wife were out in a fairly prominent restaurant recently, and they went to a bar afterwards, and his wife went to the ladies, and in the cubicle next door to where his wife was going to go into, there was two ladies sniffing cocaine. But you believe the users should not be targeted, it's the supply, not the user.
Yeah, so what the Minister is saying here is true when he talks about the violence that's associated with drugs in Ireland and the market, which is run by organised criminal gangs. But what he's really doing here, and it's quite a surprise for anybody that's been following this issue over the past few years, is he's coming out again with the old school approach that we have kind of agreed upon doesn't work, where you target the individual drug user, you single them out, and you say you're the problem. So what we should really be doing instead is we should be increasing the levels of safety around drug use. We've seen that at Electric Picnic with the drug testing unit there. And there's also plans for these to be introduced in nightclubs all around Ireland. So it makes no sense how you could have that and then target the drug user when apparently we're supposed to be helping them. What we should be doing is, and what the government should be doing, is really looking at their drug policy and if it's working or not. And I think the answer will be a flat no.
So, Ryan, forgive me now if I'm being blunt about this. Are you advocating ignoring the user and look at find the distributor?
Absolutely not. I think the user is extremely important, but I don't think the guards should be prioritising the user. I think that should be the Department of Health and experts in the field who are trained in being in nightlife venues and helping people who take drugs. This is the approach that we see works, and this is the approach the Department of Health want to take. The Department of Health were talking about rolling out volunteer teams of drug harm reduction nurses or experts to go into these venues and help people who are taking drugs if they are taking them in an unsafe way. It shouldn't be the guards going in. The guards should be focused on bigger fish to fry. This is really a key distinction between a health-led model to drug use, which targets the individual. You target them with health measures, health teams, support, and then with the bigger criminal problems, that's where the justice system comes in. So if Simon Harris is talking about the guards who are already understaffed, focusing more on the individual user, are we really going to be tackling the bigger problem? That's the question I'd like to ask.
In my opinion, I think it's a two-pronged approach on this one. And, I mean, we see what the success that the Gardaí have had in Galway. Even last weekend between Loughrea and Galway Gardaí, there was a serious haul, so there was, and a number of other hauls in other parts of the country as well. So they're targeting the dealers from there. But I mean, the situation is, I mean, and maybe you disagree with me, Ryan McHale, but when we talk about drug users or drug addicts in this regard, you think about the people sitting on the streets in Dublin. But that's not what we're talking about here. Yeah. And the drugs in question, as you know, are very addictive. But we're talking about middle class and upper class people who can actually afford to make a call or send a WhatsApp to somebody and within a couple of minutes have their hit of cocaine for the evening. And they will say it's only over the weekend and I'm not addicted to it and all of that type of stuff. But it is the middle to the upper class that's actually funding. And I'm not speaking for Simon Harris, but it's actually them, by purchasing, that's funding the illegal operations of those that are selling the drugs or importing the drugs.
I don't disagree with you there. I think you're 100% right in what you're saying. But I think people who use drugs have been left with no alternative. Quite frankly, the Irish government has really neglected this issue since the 1970s.
Well, how do you mean that they've been left with no other option, Ryan? I don't know what you mean there now. So you're saying the drug user has been left with another...
So what we need to start discussing in this country, and I hope the Citizens' Assembly discusses it, is what's been happening in other jurisdictions around the world. We're seeing countries start to regulate and legalise the sale of cannabis, the biggest seller of drugs, take it out of the hands of the criminal gang. And even larger number of countries are starting to decriminalise drug use, which is the fourth step. So what the government really are saying is they failed to really control the supply of drugs. So we're going to go back to the old trick where we say we're going to target the individual drug user, which, let me remind everybody listening, that has never worked. And I'm sure some of the older listeners have heard this type of statement be made by successive ministers for justice. So what we need to start doing now, this is the right time, and it's already been happening, this discussion in Ireland. Fianna Fáil TDs have come out and said we need to legalise and regulate certain drugs. Similar sentiments have been expressed by those within the Crainn party.